Thank you for joining me, Eve, on another episode of Poopology. And as always, I have with me my co-host Claire.
Hello.
And my producer Uzma.
Hi.
And we have two very special guests this week. So today we're going to be talking about women in charity. So ladies, please introduce yourselves.
Okay, so my name's Jamila and I'm an operations manager at a youth charity called Futureversity.
And my name's Zora and I'm the director of the Muslim Youth Helpline.
Thank you so much to you both for being here today. So I'm going to kick things off with my poopy moment of the year, or the several years rather than the year. But so because this episode is about young people, I thought I'm going to pull one out the bag, like one really old one, brewed nicely. So my poopy moment when I was little, probably 7 or 8 years old, is that my mum left me at the library once. She actually, I thought she forgot me. It turns out she didn't quite forget me. But basically, we went to the library together, and her and my aunt and my uncle went upstairs to the adult section. They left me downstairs in the kids section. And she said, just read and then we'll come and get you on the way out. So I was like happily sitting around reading my book. And then the security guard came and he was like, the library's closed now, you need to go. And I was like, but my mum hasn't come down yet. He said, there's no one up there. Everyone's gone. You're the last person in the building. And I was like, really? How's that possible? I'm 7. My mum said she'll come and get me. Oh. It's like, no, you need to leave. Oh. So I put on my Eskimo suit because obviously, as I say, I was 6 or 7, so I'd recently, maybe moved to England about 2 years prior to that. And still, my mum dressed me like an Eskimo. It was probably August, but we're from Turkey. So to her, it was like minus 50 degrees in her mind. And she used to make me wear 15 different layers on. I couldn't actually put my arms down flat. That's how many layers of clothes I had. I don't think I could bend my arms either. Maybe not even my legs. She was actually describing to Uzma the other day the different layers of clothing she used to make me wear. So what did she say? Something like tights, then socks, then pajama bottoms, then some sort of thermal from M&S, and then a pair of actual trousers.
Wow. So you were just...
Yeah, basically shuffling around like a robot. And so I put my Eskimo suit back on and I went outside and I thought, no, Mum's going to be outside. And he actually genuinely closed the library door and locked it.
Oh my god.
Which was even more weird because I think about it now. Would you just put a 7-year-old child who's like, my mum is here somewhere, just out on the front door. You literally just went, off you go, and then closed the door, locked it. And I was like, shit, I think everyone actually has genuinely gone home. Where the hell is my mum? And then I thought, oh, maybe she's gone across the road to Tesco or something. I'll just sit on the stairs. I think I sat there for about 15, 20 minutes. And then I thought, no, my mum's actually genuinely left me here at the library. How bizarre. So I walked myself back home for the first time ever on my own. And somehow, I found the way, and I got home, and I remember opening the door, thinking, okay, Mum's got to be here, and she wasn't there. And then I spent another 45 excruciating minutes, trying to figure out then where my mum was, because then I got scared that something could happen to her. And it turns out she was still upstairs. The security guard hadn't gone upstairs. There was a whole load of human beings up there, not aware that he'd locked the doors, about 20 people. They all came downstairs. He opened the door and let them out. And then Mum said, have you seen my child? And he said, no, all the kids have gone home. So then she lost her mind and thought that someone had killed me inside the library. So she was convinced that she was going to find my dead body in the library. So she kicks up a big fuss and says, I want all the doors opened, I want to see every room. I'm not leaving until I see every room. Where's my child? And the whole time he just takes her around all the rooms. He doesn't say, oh yeah, there was this weird robot kid with 50 layers on. And she said about her mum and I kicked her outside. No. So they walk around the entire library. Mum's crying and, demanding someone calls the police and where the hell is her child. And I'm at home thinking, who killed my mother? Why is she not at home? And so there you go. So the guy didn't say anything.
So he booted out a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
And then to cover up his tracks, lies to the mother.
Basically, yeah.
What?
So my aunt, my uncle, my mum, they were all searching this entire library, basically, made him open every locked door in the whole place just to see, and asking all the people, like, when have you seen this girl? And some people are like, yeah, she was sitting next to this little boy, and they're like, how old was the little boy? How little was the little boy? You know, mum's like, I thought maybe you got, like, you know, raped and murdered by an 18-year-old, you know, or something like that in her head. She's got.
So how did she eventually find you?
Well, there was nothing left for them to do. They called the police. They actually, like, reported me missing in this library. The police turns up, they look around, and then they say, well, go home, we'll let you know, like, if we see her down the road. So the police is out driving around the roads, you know, in the area. Mum walks back home because, you know, this was prior to mobile phone days.
Yeah.
So she went back home to obviously wait for the phone to ring to see if they found me, and I was obviously at home. So she walked in through the door, and I'm like, where the hell have you been? I thought you were dead. And she just, like, burst out crying, you know, obviously.
Oh my
like,
God.
was really happy to see me, and then she almost beat me up.
Okay, but to be fair, this is all that library guy's fault.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Yeah, so she was like, why did you leave me? You know when your mum's like, I love you, I miss you, I'm so sorry.
Never do that again!
Yeah, and then she's like, why the hell would you go without me? You know?
He's like, the man kicked me out!
Oh, what the hell is wrong with you? You're 7, you can't walk home on your own. Do you not know this? Have I not taught you anything? And I'm like, it's okay, Mum, I had protection. in my bulletproof outfit that nothing could penetrate.
Thank God.
So there you go, that was my very poopy moment when I was 7.
Very, very poopy.
That's really poopy.
Uzma.
Mine was quite recently. I was at a birthday party dinner thing, and we were having dinner, and it was really loud, and it was actually only 4 of us, and the girl next to me proceeded to ask me a question. I did not hear her. I asked her, I was like, excuse me, 4 times. So at the end of it, I was like, I don't think I can ask her to repeat herself again. Like, it's 4 times. I was like, I'm either going to say yes or no, and then just hope for the best. But by the
Just
time
answering a question without knowing what the question
But
is.
the thing is, by the time it got to the 4th round of her asking me, the other 2 girls had started listening. So everyone knew what the question was, other than me. So I just went with the yes.
Uh-oh.
And I have no idea what I said yes to. They all looked really shocked. And then the waitress came, so then the conversation turned, but I still do not know what I said yes to.
I thought you were going to reveal to us.
No! I have no idea what I said yes to. And I just
you
left.
still
No,
Did you ask them
You
afterwards?
asked.
No, I thought it was too late. I thought
You know when the
bullet.
moment passes.
It's
No,
just past now.
but you could be that girl that, you know, does, like because you could have said, like, do you have Coke on you? And they're like,
Do you know
yes.
Can I be honest? She was high off her head.
Okay.
God bloody knows.
You know, like, there's probably a parallel universe where she's having this conversation saying, I was at dinner with these 3 people, and I was asking Usma this question, and can you believe she said yes?
Because I had never met her before, and I don't think I will ever meet her again. So that's why I was like, I'm just going to go with a yes or a no.
You know,
and
you
hope
might
for the best.
see her
Do you
in
think she
about-
listens to poopology?
Well, I hope to God not.
No, actually, at the same time.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
it's a
because you
good
might
thing.
actually find out what the
Yeah.
question was.
If
Yeah.
you're out there, person who was at dinner with
Yeah.
Usma, please get in touch.
Yeah,
We'd
please
like
let
to
us
know what the question.
Well, seeing as my other friend said she was so high, I'm not sure she will even remember what the question was herself.
Wow.
Wait, did your other friend hear the question?
Yeah, maybe I should ask her.
Ask them.
Maybe. I think you should.
Yeah, why haven't you already done that?
What have you agreed to do?
What's your friend's phone number? Let's call her now and find out. I can't write this long.
Text her. Hopefully by the time we get round the table, we'll know the answer. Do it.
Yeah, we're waiting for you to WhatsApp.
Do it. No, it's not WhatsApp, it's iMessage, isn't it?
Sorry,
Yeah.
whatever.
Either.
Slide in the DMs.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And I like the gang signs you threw across the down with the
Yeah,
kids. Oh my gosh, so not down.
So Claire, what's your poopy moment?
So my middle boy, this is his first year reception,
this year, and he had been going to school for about a month, and his teacher pulled both my husband and I aside to say, oh my God, Fletcher just did the most hilarious thing. I was like, oh, okay. She said, we were having a discussion in class about food and allergies and what you could possibly be allergic to and all this kind of stuff, and she asked the class, do you have any allergies or are you allergic to anything? And Fletcher puts his hand up. She said yes, and he goes, I'm allergic to my mum and dad. He was 4.5, he wasn't even 5 when he said this. It's like, yeah, good one.
I totally agree with that. I'm allergic to you too as well. I
thought you were going to say you're allergic to the genius.
Yeah, that as well. I think I've got a slight wool allergy, actually, thanks to the outfits she used to make me wear. Yeah. Jem, what's your poopy moment?
So I'm going to go with something that happened today. So quite recent.
So it's a fresh
thing. So due to work and us starting up a delivery of our Stride into Summer programme in Greenwich, not as a plug at all, I was just going to meet some of our youth leaders and peer motivators who are doing their first day training today, and my plan was to be there between 11 and 11:30 because it was only going to take an hour. Obviously public transport was on top form, so not only did my train stop in the tunnel for 20 minutes, so I couldn't actually tell anybody that now I was running late, but then got to the next station and half the doors wouldn't close, so another 15 minutes, and then it just changed lines. I was meant to go to New Cross Gate, and then he just announced that we were now going to Peckham Rye, or the Queen's Line.
Completely in the wrong direction.
So literally, I was on the if I got off when those doors first started playing. So then I ended up getting on a train. Thankfully, we have City Mapper. I thank you, City Mapper. So I get there with 3 minutes to spare before they start their training, which is going to last for 4 hours, and I won't be able to get back to them to deliver what I needed to deliver to them and then leave. So I'd spent like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes for 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Circling around London on a train.
I literally, at one point when I did get on the train, I did wonder if I'd gotten on the wrong train because it seemed to be going back in the same direction I'd just come from.
Zora, what was your poopy moment?
My poopy moment was from just a couple of weeks ago. So last week was my birthday, and usually I have no issues about how old I am, and in fact, the older I get, I sort of feel like the better I feel, and I think that's partly because being the director of an organisation in this sector, you're young unless you're like 55 or something, and so I often will try and make myself look older and things, which is fine. So I've never had issues with getting older.
You mean you're not 65?
No, I'm not. I know.
But you look good.
Well, so last week was my birthday, and a couple of days before that, I was recording another podcast with a youth group, and they were all talking all about lots of issues and things. And there was a point at which we had a break, and I was typing something on my laptop, and there was this guy who was maybe, I don't know, mid to late 20s, just sitting kind of next to me. He wasn't on the podcast, but he was in the room. And kind of from the corner of my eye, I can kind of see him, and he said, Auntie Zora, can I ask you a question? And I didn't quite clock that he was talking to me, because who the hell is Auntie Zora? And then a minute later, I just thought, sorry, were you talking to me? And he said, yeah, you're Auntie Zora, aren't you? And I sort of looked at him like, if you're 10, you can call me Auntie Zora, but if in your late 20s, I'm like, maybe...
a little creepy.
Yeah, seriously. I was like, maybe like 5 or 10 years older than you. You can't call me Auntie. It was really... And I suddenly got really freaked out that people in their 20s are calling me Auntie. Like, what has happened? What has gone wrong? Something has gone very wrong. I am not your auntie. Just no.
When did that tick box happen? When did I move to the next stage?
Yeah. Seriously. Yeah,
No, too young for auntie.
Yeah, seriously. If you're 10, it's fine. And if you're my godchild, fine. But apart from that, I'm not your auntie. No.
I feel like that was quite definite.
I was going to call you Auntie later.
I mean, Auntie Zora has a nice ring to it.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no.
Categorically no.
Would it make any difference if you had older people who you knew were older that referred to you as Auntie Zora? Because I feel like it's maybe an honorific of...
Honorific.
Did
you just make that word up like me?
No, it's actually a word.
Horrific.
Claire's on the case. We're going to check, see if it's real.
I don't know how I feel about that. If somebody, like, let's say
You know,
somebody
like,
who's
show you
65
respect.
called me auntie.
As in, like, because, you know, you're the director, so...
Yeah, still no.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered if it worked any better, you know.
Yeah, good question, but no.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first time someone called me Auntie Eve, I was a bit...
Is it not there?
Well, look, I
Yeah.
reckon the rule should be if you can pinch someone's cheek, they can call you auntie.
Oh, really? No, I have, like, grown people calling me Auntie Eve now.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Well, maybe I should-
Okay.
But I think
So-
I'm
I have to
older
get
than
used
you.
to it. Not that much, really. Doubt it.
So Jamila is correct. Honorific is a title that conveys esteem, courtesy, or respect for position or rank when used in addressing or referring to a person.
Yeah, baby,
Oh,
$10
damn it.
word.
In-house thesaurus.
We do like a dictionary.
Well, I just needed to check because it sounded like
It sounded fake.
sounded made up. Fake news.
Just because your guys' vocabulary is not as
Oh.
wide as mine.
So we've done a couple of special episodes on women in technology, women in construction, and I felt it was quite important for us to do something around charity. And since you both work for youth charities, which is something that we're passionate about, we thought that it would be great to interview you guys and have you on the show.
Thank you for having us.
No problem. So first I'm going to start off by reading out some facts that I found online when I was doing my research. So apparently there is almost 3 million young people between the ages of 0 and 25 living in just London at the moment, which is 1/3 of the population of the capital. Very high. So we obviously have a very high young kind of community in London. 700,000 of them live in poverty, and 1.1 million live in households with income below the minimum wage. So that's quite a scary statistic. And I was reading something, I found an article actually that the NHS had released in November 2018, which was also looking at the prevalence of mental health problems amongst young children and young people between the ages of 2 and 19. And apparently 1 in 8 has a diagnosed mental health condition. So I suspect the actual numbers are probably slightly higher because this obviously refers to diagnosed. So firstly, as a young person, you have to recognise yourself that you probably have a problem, and then you have to go and talk to somebody about it and then actually officially be diagnosed with it. So I suspect the numbers are actually significantly higher than that. So all of those are quite frightening statistics, really. And since you're both from slightly differing but working with young people, I just wanted to hear from you guys your perspectives and the types of young people you come across and the issues that you regularly hear over and over again.
I feel like we could talk about issues for days, really. I think you've painted a little bit of a bleak picture, and sadly I think that's quite an accurate picture, really. If you think about half of all mental illness starts before the age of 18, so really we need to pay attention to what's going on with young people. And actually, just adding to the stats, the link between childhood trauma and addiction is actually stronger than the link between obesity and type 2 diabetes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I never would have tied those two together, yeah.
Yeah, so the childhood trauma that you're talking about coming from families where there's really not enough income, the prevalence of things like food banks in the city and the rest of the country at the same time, it's not a great picture. So I don't know, I guess I feel like there's some hope out there because there is help out there. But in terms of how mental health is looking among young people and then the effects that has on them when they grow up, it's not a pretty picture.
Yeah, do you think that people are more aware, though, of mental health issues now than ever before? So it's talked about a little bit more. Are young people also more aware and more forthcoming with, speaking to people about their issues now than before? Have you seen a change at all?
I think so. I think when you look at things like the media, people are talking about things a lot more. I think stigma and taboo are still, alive and kicking, but slightly less with some issues. So, for example, people are talking a lot more about things like anxiety, a lot more openly. Less so things like depression, which I think is still seen as very much kind of something to be ashamed of and that it's really hard to talk about. So I think things are changing. Yeah, but maybe not as much as kind of we need it to change, I think.
Right.
I mean, one of the studies that we did at the Helpline showed us that 40% of young men, so under 30, I guess, 40% of them, the last time they had an issue, they didn't talk to anyone about it.
Yeah.
So as much as we are kind of, it's kind of shaping a bit more conversation in the kind of national consciousness, young people are still going without talking to people about their issues, which is a problem.
Yeah, young men especially seem to be, because I guess men find it more difficult to talk about their feelings in general.
Yeah.
Now, they're brought up slightly differently, right? As women, we're a little bit more forthcoming and open about how we feel, whereas I think for men it's a little bit harder perhaps.
And even if they're brought up within their family situations to be more open, they get outside their front doors and everybody else tells them that they need to be strong, men don't cry, men don't do this, men don't do that. And actually, if they're struggling, then they've got all these extra burdens and challenges, and actually all they want to do is tell somebody that they're struggling.
What age do you think it kicks in for men/boys not talking? Because I have 3 little ones, and at the moment they're very open about everything that they're doing. But what sort of age do you think that would sort of start stopping, and like asking the questions and sharing their feelings will then start to dwindle off?
Secondary schools. That first year at secondary school, when they're, especially if they're in an all-boys school, actually it doesn't really matter if they're in an all-boys school or a mixed school or whatever, but at secondary school, that's when they learn big pond rules and stuff. And also, if they're if they're overly emotional or dramatic or creative, then they don't want to be seen to that, because that could be seen to be something else, and then bullying and whatever. And even if they're not, it makes most young men clam up.
Yeah, that's the kind of age also where you're trying to kind of figure out where you fit in the world.
Yeah.
Where are you? I mean, if you've gone from a primary school to a different secondary school, that's a whole nother host of issues where you're kind of, you used to be the kind of biggest and oldest kids in a school, and now you're the tiniest and the youngest. It's a completely different place to be. And so figuring out who you are and where you are, and when you say things, people react to you differently, and who you're supposed to be as well. And also just juggling that sort of, who am I supposed to be at home versus who am I supposed to be at school versus who I am with my teachers. There's a whole lot of identity going on, a lot of kind of learning who you are in the first place, which I think is actually confusing for adults, let alone children.
And in terms of the age groups, what sort of age groups do you work with, Jem?
So the charity work with young people aged 11 through to 19,
okay,
and up to 25 if they have any special educational needs.
And do you find that within that age group you have quite a lot of people facing all sorts of different issues?
So depending on the programme they're on, depends on sort of the amount of contact we have with them. But yeah, anything from food poverty, and some of our programmes, we've had young people tell us the only reason they came was because their friend told them that they'd get breakfast and lunch. And then they found out there was snacks as well, and they invited another friend because they just thought it was the best idea ever. They loved the course, but literally they would never have stepped through the door if there hadn't been food.
Wow.
And we've got other young people who, their families are relatively affluent, but they're bored. And they just want to try something new. But, relatively affluent doesn't mean you can spend £400 on an introduction to art course, for just one child for a week of their summer holiday when you've got 1, 2 or 3 other children.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things that's always been core to our charity, is that we provide everything free at point of contact. So the young people don't pay. We have funders who pay for them to take part.
Can you just explain a little bit about what you guys actually do, just to put some context?
So in the main, we run summer and holiday educational programs, and I say educational with a light touch, so it's not like we're based in schools and stuff. We try and make things fun, engaging, and if anything, so that young people don't even realise they're learning particular skills. So one of our programs is called Vacation Education. It's a 10-day program, so when they sign up for all 10 days. We work with our corporate partners, and they're doing presentations, learning presentation skills. One of our corporate partners has a whole stage with ceilings with mics and stuff, and so we did a Dragon's Den. Shoved them on the stage, filled the room, and then over the day we got them prepped up. But at the end of the day, they had to present in front of all their peers plus a panel of dragons. And I remember one young man was absolutely petrified. He was shaking in his boots, but he was doing his bit for his team, which meant that he was reading the slides with his back to everybody. And you could see him shaking, but then literally as he finished, he turned, smiled, and breathed a sigh of relief and was like, yeah, I did it, kind of thing. But we know that the next time he's going to do that, he's going to do a bit better, and the next time he's going to do a bit better. And actually, when we're introducing these skills, actually we want them to maybe fail really quickly and quite easily, but bounce back and stuff. And actually, was that young guy, that guy wasn't a fail.
Do you know what? In fairness to him, I've seen some professionals present like that. So.
Well, I'm like that in every podcast, basically. I know you guys can't see me, but I basically sit with my back to my guests just in case.
No, but you know, like, because they're quite young and they're trying to, you know, we'll try and give them some pointers, but then we will let them make their own mistakes or make their own successes, so that they're able to own that and say, okay, you know, I was scared, and I see a lot of feedback forms where I came out of my comfort zone, or they've been hanging around.
It must be a great confidence boost for them to like do stuff that, you know, they're not naturally sort of at ease at doing, and feel like they've achieved it, obviously.
Well, I think so, because their parents come back saying, you know, they're more focused at school. Their teachers come back saying that they're prepared to ask questions that they wouldn't ask before, even to the point where they're prepared to ask questions that may make them look silly, but it helps them understand what they're doing, so they don't care what the rest of their friends think, because it's going to make what they're doing easier for them.
Yeah.
You know? And that's kind of quite a big mind shift.
And I saw that a lot of the courses, because I was looking on your website earlier, are all quite vocational. You know, you have like introduction to architecture.
Yeah.
Obviously, I noticed that one, and I noticed the building one, and I was like, why wasn't I asked to do this? Hang on a minute. So I'm volunteering my time now, Jem. So I'm expecting a phone call.
Well,
from
we
you.
do have a partner with. So we do partner with the Stephen Lawrence Centre in Greenwich. For that, but I will keep you on the list for next year.
Thank you.
But yeah, so it's a case of, you know, you're trying to marry lots of things. So it's get into law, get into medicine, but you know, there's go-karting, there's rock climbing. You've actually got an opportunity to try almost anything during your summer. So you know that when you go back to school, and that dreaded question, what did you do over the summer? Well, most of our kids are what we class as disadvantaged, and I wouldn't necessarily call it just socioeconomically, but maybe they come from non-professional households or non-degree households. You know, they may have other options, but they just don't know what the whole breadth of what the horizon is outside of school, where they get told, you know, go into architecture and one of the big four, I don't know, become a doctor or become a lawyer.
It's so important though, because I think sometimes young people don't really know what's out there. And so you don't really know what you're good at or what you're passionate about if you've not experienced it before.
Yeah. We did last year we had a young man on our prototyping an app course. Apparently, according to his parents, he's genius at level. I mean, most parents probably think that, so you know, take that with a pinch of salt. But like whatever he was doing on the course, he was like, I want to work for this company, I want to do this. The guy on the course was saying, your job wouldn't just be this. And he was like, no, I will find a job where I can just do this. And his parents came back to us saying it's the first time he's even shown an interest in the future, which is, you know, it's a massive quantum leap for young people.
Yeah. Just to go back to that point, my mum thinks she's a genius.
To be quite honest, I think we all
she doesn't call me a genius.
Does she think you're a genius?
I don't think so.
Genius.
Actually, I don't think so. But she regularly calls herself a technology genius.
Yeah.
Uzma can testify to this fact.
Is that relative to her age?
Someone who's 95.
Oh,
it's relative to someone who's
She is not going to be happy hearing that.
I want to be that person. I want to be that person who's just like, yeah, I'm a genius at this. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And what?
Well, the thing is, you see so many young people where they're at some point, like when they're little, they're like, I am amazing at everything I do, and then at some point, do we like stop? Yeah, but do we like beat it out of them, like be constantly telling them they're not good enough? Like, cause
I think it's a combination, isn't it? Some of it is self-confidence. So at some stage when you're growing up, you come across an obstacle of some description where your confidence gets knocked. Whether that's, you know, you throw yourself off a slide and you fall flat on your face, or whether it's, you know, you go to talk in front of a bunch of your peers in assembly and you realise you can't actually do it.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, you know, something happens to you basically at some stage where you fail at something that you might not have thought that you were going to fail at. And I think some people take that in a positive way, but a lot of people, especially for young people, it's a bit of a knock to your confidence, isn't it? And then you start to do that, oh God, I'm so stupid, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at... Because that, as with any, any human, once you're in that mind, set, you just kind of start doing all that negative talking to yourself, basically, don't you? You list all the things that you think you're not good at. So, for me, like, I was always a great student, and then I got a D in maths, and that was it. And then I thought, I'm so stupid, I can't even add 2 and 2 together, this is terrible. And, I started telling myself I was so stupid, I could not do sciences, I could not do maths, I could not do... Then I went on to do a degree in medical biology. But, at that point, I think that's, something like that happens to everyone, and you just lose...
Recently, for my 5-year-old, just had a birthday party, and one of the games that they wanted to play was running races. And I thought, oh my god, this is going to end in disaster. It always does. And I was like, 20 minutes, get set, go. And they all started running, and one of the little girls fell over, and she started crying, and she got really upset. And I said to her, do you want to try again? She said yes. And I went, all right, everybody, give her a round of applause and a big cheer, because she wants to do it again, and it's really brave. So off she went, and she did it again. She was really happy with herself. But I thought, she's only 5, and if I say to her, oh, never mind, she won't be prepared to do it again. So I thought it was really important just to give her a boost.
Back up as well.
Yeah, and make everybody else realise that she's going to give it a go, and give her a cheer and a bit of a hooray. So it's good.
The thing is, it is quite hard when you're not naturally good at something, or if you've tried something. I think even just as a grown, I'll give you a great example. My flatmate, I've gotten into playing PlayStation as a bit of a release, and I love this game called Overcooked, and I am kick-ass at this game. I'm really, really good.
Are you genius level?
I am genius level at this game. And I love playing it because it just, takes my mind off anything, because all I'm doing is trying to win, so I can't think about anything else that's going on in my day. And I got her to come play with me once, and she started off and she played, and she wasn't that good, and I was kind of trying to be a bit patient and, not too competitive. But basically, she got frustrated in the first sort of hour or so, and she refuses to play with me now. So I have no friends to play with. I play on my own, and I play online.
Aww.
But she kind of, I know, seriously. But she just she gave up at some point, and I tried to sort of reverse psychology her and say, well, you can try and keep going. And she was just like, no, I'm done. I've kind of had enough of that. And I thought, actually, when you're an adult, it's not often that you come across a skill you're maybe not great at, but you really have to master. But when you're a child, that's kind of all you do. You're not, you kind of just have to pick yourself up and try again about everything, which is really hard.
I suppose because we wouldn't be talking or walking if we didn't keep on trying.
But I think when your consciousness kicks in, knows when it all goes downhill a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll play with you, Zara.
Seriously, thank you.
I'm just going to say that I won't, because the last time I played a video game, it was one of those James Bond things in at uni, and I couldn't pick up the gun, and after my friend finished the level, he came back and shot me.
Oh, God. That's traumatic.
But I'm still trying to pick up the gun.
And you're scarred for life.
I still remember it, yes.
And you're refusing to play, see?
I know my level. Tetris.
But if only someone had said, do you want to try again, given you a big cheer and got you to try again?
Yeah, maybe instead of being shot, it might have had a different...
I don't know if my friend would have been too happy about that. But
So Zara, tell us a little bit about MYH and what you guys do over there.
Yeah, so we run a helpline. It runs 365 days a year. It's email, telephone and web chat. And it's basically kind of does what it says on the tin, which is emotional support for young people going through difficult times. So the biggest issues, or I suppose the most numerous issues we deal with, are really mental health bread and butter. So things like depression, anxiety, suicidal feelings, all of those sorts of things, right the way through to the more, I suppose, less common, but also really full of stigma and taboo, things like sexuality, pornography addiction, all sorts of things like that. So we deal with a lot of stuff on a daily basis. And it's interesting because younger people contact us more by web chat. So they're kind of sitting around somewhere. We have people sitting in like chicken shops or with their family. Yeah, seriously, chicken shops. And, just kind of messaging us while they're on their phone because they can contact us right kind of with the tools in their pocket. Right the way through to people who will call us with more emotional difficulties, and those calls can be really difficult to take, but also really meaningful. So I feel like the work that we do is really, really meaningful, and I think that helps when it gets tough to kind of know that you're making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, it must be terribly rewarding for both of you working for charities.
Yeah.
I'd say it's the only reason I'm still here.
Well, because I can personally feel like I've got a couple of kids in uni right now and stuff.
That's awesome.
Because they come back and they tell you, and I've got two. One's just about to, he's just graduated from law. So the other one's a first year law student. I've got a couple of medical students, Some of them just tell me that they've been to university and really anything else.
Yeah.
But you do sense of pride, because it's not necessarily, it's not a case of I've really done anything, but actually at the same time I've done something I've provided a stepping stone to get them there. And some of them I've never met. We've only ever communicated through emails and sort of on the phone when they've had difficulties logging into their accounts to book courses. But occasionally you get to meet somebody or literally feel like you know them from the moment you see them, which is really quite weird, but at the same time really quite rewarding. I love it.
Yeah, it's rewarding. I also feel like it's a bit of a privilege, really. It's a privilege to be there at a time where someone feels like they have no one and they have nothing and they're kind of on the brink or just feel like they can't turn to anyone. They can turn to us. And I feel like it's such a privilege to be able to be there during that time and help them through that time. And we also get, I guess being a helpline is slightly different because generally we don't really hear back from our clients. So people will call us, we'll talk to them or we'll communicate with them and then they're kind of gone. But sometimes we do get people either calling back in or emailing and just saying, I went through this difficult time and you were there. This Father's Day, actually, I think it's the first time I've cried about work in a long time, but I had someone send in a blog post about Father's Day and kind of describe his journey from being a young person who had a mostly absent father, and on Father's Day he was kind of reminiscing and kind of thinking about the journey that he'd been through. And I mean, I didn't know this client, I'd never read about him before, but he called the helpline at the time when he felt like he needed it the most. And he went on this whole journey, and I think he's got a really healthy attitude towards his dad now. But just reading that, reading the emotion that he went through, it brought me to tears. I thought that what an amazing story and what an incredible young man. Yeah. And the fact that we can be part of that story, I think, is just, it's great.
Yeah, because even if it's that, literally it's the exclamation mark in his entire life story, it's great to be part of it. Yeah,
really meaningful.
Very admirable. Is that the correct word? Or have I just made up a word?
No.
I regularly make up words.
It's because you're a genius, and that's what geniuses do.
No, I'm the child of a genius. The spawn of genius.
Oh, gosh.
Technology genius specifically.
Okay.
So we had to stop for a moment and turn the fan on because it's 33 degrees or something today. Or tomorrow? Or I don't know. It's very hot. It's very hot. And Jem is sweating.
I am. I think you're perspiring.
Don't ladies.
I'm glowing. I'm glowing right
We're
now.
all glowing a little bit.
Yeah. We're all getting our little bit of Beyonce wind machine moment going on as it slides past. Okay, so I have two questions. The first one is sort of referring back to what Eve was talking about in terms of the statistics. I wanted to know, what is poverty? So in the UK, what do we class as poverty? And the other one, so with the current environment, political, celebrity, etc., have you seen that have a major impact on your charities?
I'll be honest, I don't know the definition of poverty right now offhand.
It depends on who you ask what they say poverty is. It always seems to be skewed. So the government's definition of poverty and the poverty line is higher than most other places. I personally would say that poverty is, as a personal experience, somebody who, if you're a parent, is regularly skipping meals in order for your children to eat, is regularly, being woken up at night by bills worry, even if they're working 1 or 2 jobs, but it's still not enough to make ends meet. Generally living a life where you're constantly worried where the next pound is coming from, and if so, how many ways you can split it to, pay for transport, buy clothes for your children. Because I'm thinking of this as a young family unit rather than a single person experiencing poverty, which I know is a different experience. Yeah. It may have the same implications, but it's a different experience. I recently saw on the news about a woman who'd fallen behind on her rent and was evicted. So then the council said that she had elected to be homeless by not paying her rent. The reason she didn't pay her rent is because she didn't actually have enough money, even though she was working. Their option was to offer her housing. So she lived in London. She now lives in Norwich with her kids. She's got a better house, but it took her 6 months to get her kids a school place. They moved in May. They didn't get a school place till September. There was no provision for them. But she, literally, in order for them to have a home, they had to move. And I don't, not having that kind of control. I don't know. Money seems to give you some certain amount of control over your life.
That's really hard. And there's, I know with particularly vulnerable groups of people, it's really easy to fall into poverty too. So just thinking about domestic violence, for example, one of the questions that I think comes up quite a lot is, why doesn't she just leave? And I was speaking to an expert in domestic violence a few months ago, and I was really surprised by this, but if you're in a relationship and you're experiencing domestic violence and you're living at the same property and you move out, apparently the council considers you to have made yourself voluntarily homeless.
Yeah.
And so they will not house you straight away.
Yeah.
And so for a woman who's in that sort of situation who then wants to leave, it just makes things much, much worse because it's much easier then to end up homeless. And then there's the whole problem of universal credit, where, I think I was just reading about a young father who took his own life last week because he didn't want to tell his family, but he had to apply for it and then still couldn't keep up with his bills and ended up feeling like his family would be better off without him, which is really sad. Also, I'm a governor at a primary school in northwest London, in Harrow, which I consider to be, generally, I don't know, growing up there, crime was, you might get someone nicking £10 here and there, sort of thing. It felt like thoroughly middle class, I guess. But at the primary school there, teachers at our school are still handing out fruit and snacks to kids coming in the mornings because they've not had breakfast and they've not had dinner. And if they've not had breakfast and dinner, then their parents certainly haven't had breakfast and dinner either. So it does, I think I agree that it does feel like it's going up. Yeah.
And maybe it's because I'm more aware. I think before I started working for this charity, I thought I was quite aware and quite in touch with what's happening around me and what was going on in the world. And
I think we're all a little bit more aware though now.
Yeah.
I think everything's highlighted a little bit more. I think thanks to a lot of different organisations highlighting issues, as well as just the simple fact of I don't remember there being food bank collections outside Tesco's 10 years ago, but now every other month the Tesco's that's near my house, there's a food bank collection. And they, on the way in, they give you little leaflets, and there's like a list of items that they're falling short of. So if you feel like purchasing any of them and dropping them, in a basket somewhere, you can do that. So clearly, it's highlighted to me just by that very fact that there's people out there doing this in the area that I live in anyway, in the community.
It's funny. My dad. So he grew up in New Zealand. He had 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and they were very poor. And he used to tell me that they would raid the next door neighbour's vegetable patch and take vegetables and things. And he said it wasn't until about 20 years later that he ran into the neighbour and he had a conversation and said, "Oh, I'm really sorry for stealing all your fruit and vegetable." And so he went, "We used to grow them for you because we knew you had no money."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, wow. So that's kind of taking community and looking at food banks, but in a community way. And my dad had no idea because he had loads of brothers and sisters, and they just used to grow up for him. Yeah, so they had something to eat.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's a great neighbour.
Yeah.
so when I was a child at school, only 10 years ago. Stop laughing, Jamila.
That's another turn.
I remember things like you do a harvest festival in September and bring in your can to donate to the box, for your class. And I was vaguely aware that at my church they did like Christmas boxes, but I never actually saw them. I just knew that I used to hear them talking about raising money or asking for donations so they could go and buy some turkeys and basically provide a family with the food to eat over Christmas. And maybe about 3 years ago, I just happened to walk into the hall when they were actually putting together this, what I thought would be a Christmas box. And I don't know what I was expecting. What I wasn't expecting was what looked like a mini army of people with a mountain of food and a whole lot of boxes with a list and trying to work out, okay, this family has 6 people in it, this family has 4 people in it, this is how much we need to put in here, we need to do a double up on and like the realization that
I think it's because everything is so much worse now. So I think when I was young, when you considered yourself to be poor or not well-to-do was if you got school dinners, for example, or something like that. Now you're seeing people going to food banks just for tins of baked beans. They don't even have, we saw it as our friends that were not from well-to-do families. They still had fish fingers and baked beans at home. You know, we might have had something a bit, you know, better than that, but they had something. Now it's the fact that people don't even have that.
Yeah.
You know, they can't afford that. They have to go to a food bank for literally cornflakes and fish fingers and baked beans, like the most basic, you know, basic food that you can get. So I think things are obviously on a different scale now to before. What we considered poor, I think before, you know, 20 years ago or 30 years ago is different to what we would consider now.
And I do think that's had sometimes something to do with credit and debt, because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if you didn't have the money, you couldn't spend it. Like nobody. Whereas now, you know, if you can get a credit card, you can spend it, and then how much do you end up paying to
I was
get
reading something really interesting about why people can't afford houses now, how hard it is to get on the first time buyers, you know, list, and why it's so difficult now. So if you look at it,
it's not just avocado toast.
No, it's not just the avocado toast. So if you look at it, apparently, you know, 60 years ago or 50 years ago, whenever, house prices, an average house would cost approximately 2 to 3 times someone's average salary. So if your salary, let's say in the modern times, was 30 grand, your house probably cost 90 grand to purchase.
Wow.
So you would easily be able to put down your 10% deposit and then spend the next 15 years, 10 years, whatever, 20 years, depending on your monthly budgeting. You know, if you have 6 kids, you're going to have less money to pay towards your mortgage. So that would dictate whether you wanted a 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20 or 25-year mortgage. But essentially everyone would be able to pay a 25-year mortgage in time, even if they had 6 kids, and get by fine. You know, yes, maybe some of them would have had to have ate fish fingers and baked beans, but it was doable. Now it doesn't matter whether you eat fish fingers and baked beans or whatever you eat, you don't eat at all. You can't physically, you know, those stats no longer stack up in that way. You know, if your average salary is £30,000, the average house price now in London, or forget house, just a 1-bedroom flat, is about £450,000. So it's actually, you know, more than 10 times, maybe 15 times your salary. So it's virtually impossible for you to even save up the 10% deposit. You know, the 10% deposit on a £450,000 flat is £45,000. That's more than most people's annual salary before tax, you know. So you've paid tax on it, you've paid your bills, your rent, your this, your that. How much are you actually saving each year? So if it takes you 10 years to save the 45 grand, then 10 years later that flat actually isn't worth 450,000 anymore, though, is it?
You're going to need 85 grand.
Years, you now suddenly need £70,000 or 80,000 pounds. So you are constantly on the back foot. You just can't. You know, you can't get over that. So you know, they were saying that lots of people that in even our generation that were able to afford houses were because their parents had cash purchased their property, you know, like 30 years ago or whatever, and had the equity in their own property to release some money to help them, you know, with their down payment or their deposit, and all they need to do is pay their monthly amounts, and because it's not that much more than paying rent, I guess, you know, you can kind of get by on that. But most people that were able to do it because their parents released equity out of their own property.
The bank of mum and dad.
Because, you know, like I say, they paid £30,000 for their, you know, 5-bedroom house somewhere, which is now worth 500, 600, 700.
Which is now in central Balham, and it's worth a fortune.
And then all they need to do is, even if they release 10% equity in it, which is nothing, you know, paying 10% equity is like, most people don't have 90% equty in their property. So, you know, if you're 65, 70, 80, however old, releasing 10% gives you £70,000. So that would, I guess, easily pay for your, you know, child's down payment, or maybe even 2 kids' down payments, you know, depending on where they're buying. But, you know, those are the kind of numbers. So if you then look at it, if we've struggled so much, and a lot of people, I mean, some of my friends were lucky enough that their parents could do that, but I'm not that lucky. So even if one day I managed to buy myself a property, if I was to have kids, luckily I don't, you know, how would I help them then? You know, how would I release
They
equity?
would never move out.
Because
they
how
could
long
never-
would it take me to pay for my property?
Yeah.
And then by the time I've paid for it, you know, how hard would it then be for me to release enough equity to pay for God knows however much a property is going to cost in, you know, another 30 years' time, if you look
Yeah.
at the way that
Yeah.
they're increasing. So if Uzma, you know, let's say I buy a property next year, if Uzma needed help with her deposit, I mean, what the hell? You know, it would just be impossible, right? I couldn't release equity in my property.
Well, I mean, I've got 3 kids, but my middle boy's future ambitions is to be a rock star, so maybe he can afford to buy us all houses. The little one wants to be a tractor, and the oldest one wants to be an artist. So
Oh gosh.
I'm
Hopefully
gonna rant a little bit about this actually. Like, you know, how comes the artist gets to be the rich one? You know, if you're
No,
a
the rock
footballer,
star.
artist,
Rock star.
rock star, whatever you are, and you know, the doctor, the lawyer, the charity worker, the one who's what does he want to be? A tractor.
A tractor.
The tractor, which would be me. You know, I'd be the tractor. How comes we don't get to do that? That's so unfair.
Yeah.
Tractors
You know.
need houses too, you know.
more like a barn. I think.
Yeah.
Which I bet cost even more.
Yeah.
I mean,
Barn conversion, yeah.
do you not think footballers unfairly earn too much money for kicking a ball around? I'm so sorry. I know that might be a very female view on the
I'm gonna say-
Actually, they
matter.
kick the ball into a hole. So,
I'm going to say no, not because
into a net.
I actually think they should get paid that much, but because we value our entertainment more than we value our own health and like ability to do things that we actually need to do. We value entertainment. Look at like the entertainment business. How many millions are spent on just
I mean, I'm not saying
trying to keep this PG, but pissing it up a wall, really.
I'm not saying that, you know, footballers shouldn't get paid. You know,
No.
of course they should. There's lots of really amazing sports people, but I have an issue with football and male footballers because, you know, the women don't get paid as much in women's football. You know,
That
Depends on the club.
Well,
they don't get.
aren't they now trying to protest to get equal pay?
Yeah, it
Yes.
depends on the club as well, because some of the clubs have actually recognised their women as actual professionals, so they actually get a wage, whereas when they're semi-professional, they have to actually have another
No, they
job.
might get a wage, but we're talking like, you know, £1 million for every ball you kick versus, you know, what?
Yeah.
I'm
I don't
going to
know
say
how
it's mainly
much,
the
but-
smaller clubs that are recognising their
Maybe.
women.
I mean, I think the women's World Cup finals and things that happened in the last few months, they were so interesting and such interesting characters there, and they don't get paid the same amount. And I know that even the prize money is a lot less for winning, which I totally understand in some ways because it is an industry. And so if the men's one is, you know, selling more football shirts and tickets and things, then that's one thing. But I think just increasing the interest in women's football is worth doing. I hear you rant.
Yeah.
You know what?
You know, why bloody football? You know,
But I-
how about the guy who runs, you know, or who does like high jump or
But I-
something?
I
Why
re-
doesn't he earn as
I
much?
really would like more of a Wimbledon style approach. You know, so if you get knocked out, or you do something, you know, you get your first round. If you get knocked out, you only get a little bit. And then, you know, as you work out, like some of these guys are more character than skill. I feel sometimes, not all of them, but some of them. Maybe the ones I just
Listen,
done it.
you
But-
require a lot of skill to be a pilot. You
Yeah.
require a lot of skill to be a brain surgeon. To be one of those guys that put microscopic things into people's bodies and, you know,
What about the guy who
change
puts a
where
biscuit
their
in
entire
the hole
internal
into the
organs
cup?
are.
Like that's got to be some skill. Because like if I tried to do that, have you not seen that advert where it's like a little biscuit and it's on the thing and he kicks the ball and it hits the cup but doesn't hit the rest of the? Okay, I really like those
Yeah, but I
biscuits.
think
By
that
the way.
footballers, the really, really skilled ones, should get paid as much as the brain surgeons that are really, really skilled.
Which is probably like a tenth of what they currently get paid.
Exactly. So that's my point, is that what they get paid is like ridiculous.
It's nuts.
How about
Yeah,
this?
it is
How about this?
ridiculous.
Instead of taxing everybody else, why don't we just tax footballers?
I think
That I
that's
can
a
agree
great
on.
idea.
Yes.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't expect that at all. I just thought I'd throw it out there, but I wasn't expecting it.
So with your charities, do you see when it comes to things like football or celebrities, etc., do you see that having an effect on
Absolutely.
the
Yes.
youth?
Gosh, yes. I mean, just to start off with social media, I feel like with your rant about football wages, I think I could have a rant about social media. Social media is harming young people in so many different ways. I mean, even for adults, it's looking at the best parts of people's lives and then comparing yourself, or even just feeling like, even if you're not comparing yourself, it's feeling like everyone else is having this amazing time and going on all these holidays and doing all these wonderful things, and actually I feel a bit crappy today. That it's just, it doesn't feel good. And for young people, particularly with things like Snapchat filters, so there are plastic surgeons who have young people coming in, showing them a phone with themselves with, like, I don't know what kind of filter on Snapchat, and saying, can you make me look like this? And it's just unrealistic and unattainable, and it's giving people disorders of all types. Yeah. Social media is just, I don't think we found a way to make social media safe in our society at the moment.
It's not safe, and especially for our young people.
Yeah.
But I've got a really great example. So a friend of mine that I went to school with put out on social media that, you know, she was living in LA, she'd married this guy, and I hadn't been in touch in about 5 years, and it was just like a really, really nice story. So I was really quite surprised when I ran into her just ran into her. Turns out it was all BS. Not married, hadn't been to LA, no significant other, wasn't living this great LA life that she was living on Facebook, and I was really quite surprised. And she was just like, well, she just felt her life was really humdrum in comparison to everybody else.
Yeah,
So she wanted something special.
I think this social media issue isn't even just a young person's issue.
No, I agree.
I mean, I was thinking this a couple of months ago, and I posted something that my mum made me take down because she said it's so depressing. People are going to think you're going to kill yourself. And I made a little video of myself. Basically, I was on Instagram, and I was looking around because I was preparing for this podcast and lots of other things that we're doing, and I was trying to figure out how people are, you know, getting followers and what they're posting and what type of content they have, and also trying to find some influencers just to see if we could, you know, do some collaborations in terms of getting the message out there. And I was searching for women, obviously, and I realised that a lot of the influencers, my God, you know, I was looking through these people's pages, and it's kind of like, oh look, I can do yoga pose in 15 different ways. Oh look, I am slim. Oh look, I am beautiful. Oh look, I have like really posh clothes, and they all tag where their clothes are from. You know, they do photos.
They don't own those
I'm
clothes.
just going to, you know, whichever so and so party, and then underneath they're like, thank you to so and so designer or whatever company it is, or I don't know. And then you know, they're on yachts, and every other picture is on some sort of beach somewhere with palm trees and, you know, God knows what. And I'm thinking, really, like, seriously, this is your life? And like one of them had written, you know, 3 kids, business owner, single mom, entrepreneur, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. And I was like, I felt a little bit intimidated actually. I thought, wow, I mean, in my own little head, in my own little world, I thought I'm relatively successful, you know, in my own world. I thought, my God, compared to these people, I'm like a loser. You know, I'm a total loser. I can't do yoga poses in 15 different positions, and, you know, is that what I'm supposed to be able to do? You know, to be considered successful as a woman, are you supposed to be all of these things? You know, yoga doing, cooking, you know, going to the best restaurants, taking photos of like the most amazing food constantly, going on holidays every other week. You know, how are you an entrepreneur? How can you run a business? Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I can't go on holiday every other week. I'm lucky if I can go away once a year, because who's going to take care of my business whilst I'm away?
Yeah, I mean, my background is in social media, and I find it interesting that companies like Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, etc. have created this world for us, yet they are not living up to their responsibilities in terms of safeguarding. It does make me a little cross when they're like, oh, well, it's self-regulated. It's like, no, you can find me on Facebook to advertise to me, to sell me those shoes, yet you can't create an algorithm to help safeguard against inappropriate content. So that's where I think, no, you need to step up a little bit here.
Absolutely. It can be really scary. I had a bit of an experience when I did this TV show a couple of years ago, and someone must have seen it and sent me a death threat on Facebook.
Oh my God.
And actually it's still there. So if I log into my Facebook account and look at my old messages, it's still all there. Although it's etched into my brain, so I know every single word of it. But I reported it to the police. It turns out it was somebody in Scotland. I think it took 2.5 years, almost 3 years, to get to some sort of resolution. They fined her £300, and that was it. That's it. I didn't go through any sort of, and I was thinking about this all the time because there was some random person who I don't know who sent me a death threat. I did that thing where, you know, I told my mum, and then I instantly regretted telling my mum because she said, is it okay for you to go outside? And I said, of course it is, of course. And I was thinking, oh God, is it safe for me to go outside? I don't know. Am I going to get stabbed?
I mean,
I
how
don't know.
long ago was this?
Almost 3 years.
So you're a working professional, right? You can cope with that.
I found it hard to cope
Yeah.
with it.
But just think if that was a young person.
Absolutely.
I mean, how do they deal with that?
They are much more cruel with each other
Yeah.
as well.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I've seen these things that people are videoing, you know, little kids getting bullied by other kids and
Yeah.
posting it, and you know, not only is it humiliating that you got beaten up or you got shoved around to begin with,
Yeah.
but then it's out there for everyone who wasn't even there to see. You know, which is
Yeah.
just an extra layer of just,
yeah.
you know.
And you also can't get away from it because I guess, you know, 20 years ago you get bullied, you go home, you have a bit of a sanctuary at home, or at least those bullies aren't there. Whereas now you go home, it's actually not just in your bedroom, it's in your bed because it's on your phone. And so when you pick up your phone in the morning or before you go
everywhere.
to sleep, it's
Yeah.
right there. You can't detach from it. You're reading all these horrible things online at home, plus the bullying you're getting at school. It's terrible.
And I
Yeah.
feel like people are less filtered as well on social media.
Oh,
So you know,
definitely.
to your face, even if you were being bullied, there's still a limit to what a bully would say.
Yeah.
But when it's behind a screen, I feel like people say like atrocious things.
The
that,
keyboard warriors.
yeah, that they
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
never actually be able to say, you know, to your face. So
Something about being anonymous that turns you into a bit of a troll, it seems. I don't know what that is about
Yeah.
human nature, but it seems to be lots of people suddenly just become really mean.
So I listened to this really interesting TED talk by Cameron Russell, and she is a model, and she was talking about, so she first started modelling when she was 13, and she shows a picture of her first professional photograph, and she said, and by the way, this photo, where she looks like a little girl, she said, was taken the following day when I was with my grandma. So she said, this is all about perception. She said, my modelling agency created this persona for me, and then she proceeded to show other photographs, the comparison of the same day or the day after. You're like, wow, she's a 13-year-old kid, yet here she looks like a 22-year-old woman,
Wow.
and this is the perception. So she was talking about don't always look at what people are saying because that's not what's true.
Yeah. Look beyond the filter, basically.
Yeah, it was really interesting talk.
The thing is, it is hard also to share your. I mean, I think I've been thinking a lot myself about how much I share online. So after the death threat thing, I think I got a little bit freaked out. So I didn't share things like where I was. Maybe I'd share it the day after or something. But I still struggle with how much to share. And I guess the thing is, if you do have, let's say you're having a terrible week where, you know, work is going wrong, I have anxiety, so let's say my anxiety is, you know, pretty terrible or something like that. How do you share that without feeling really self-conscious about, well, everyone's going to think I'm weak or there's something wrong with me or just that I'm just a bit rubbish? And I think it's still quite hard, I think, to get through that, to actually share the real moments as well as the, you know, I'm on holiday type thing. I think it's quite hard, and I don't know that social media is even the place for it.
No, I think certain platforms probably are, depending on if perhaps you're in a particular group.
Yeah.
Where that is what they talk about and that is their subject, and you could probably have that conversation. But even with your friends, I mean, you'd probably be subjective to who you would speak to as well. You mean you might not have that conversation with us, but you might have that with someone you're much closer with who understands.
That's the thing with social media, isn't it? You don't have that filter. So if it's not social media and you're communicating face to face, you have a choice to sort of say, I want to share this, but I don't think Jem's the right person. You know, I think Eve is, or I think Claire is. So you are actively making a choice on who you want to communicate how you feel with, and you're probably making the right choice on whoever's going to be able to give you the best support, right? But with social media, it's just there, like for everyone and anyone, the ones that, you know, could be useful as well as the ones that are not going to be useful.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, isn't it? It's non-filtered. So your audience is.
One of my friends recognised that she was having panic attacks because of watching a YouTuber. Like, this YouTuber had put herself out there and started talking about her anxiety and her symptoms and exactly what was going on. and she went as far as to record herself when having a panic attack. And then she was saying how it was really hard for her to put it out because she'd know that she'd get so much hate for it. But even if one person gets something positive about it, like she feels like she's helped someone. And my friend was actually like going through anxiety and having panic attacks, and she did not recognize what it was, and it happened when we were all out together at a restaurant, and then it like hit her and she was like, I think this is what's happening right now. So I think there is also positives to it, even though there is also this whole negative side to it as well.
Social can be used for good.
It can be, but I do think though that putting it out there like that can also be really dangerous. I was working with a group of young people who had taken to cutting because they'd watched some videos where the person was saying that cutting helped them relieve stress, and they were feeling very stressed. So they started cutting, and then like 2 years of trying to break that habit of, and it's something they learned because they thought, oh, this is a way to do it. This, I learned it off University of YouTube.
I've seen similar things about anorexia and bulimia and stuff like that. People commenting that there are these sites or people that are releasing images or information or exchanging information on how to, puke or how to. I don't know. I don't know enough about the problem or how people kind of behave. But they're giving each other advice on how to be a certain way, but might not necessarily be very helpful.
I guess it's also about there's definitely a positive, I think, in role modelling for other people. So when people like Nadia Hussein talks about anxiety, I mean, it made me feel like I could talk more about my anxiety. And I think if you're a young person going through it, you're like, oh well, she has it. Oh, okay, I can still function and have a good life, and I still have this, and it's fine. But I think we also have to be really responsible. So do you remember 13 Reasons Why from Netflix?
Yeah.
So I remember there was a bit of a hype about it, and then I thought, okay, whatever, I kind of ignored it, and then I watched the series. And as I watched the series, to my mind, I was thinking, actually, Netflix has been actually very responsible, because at the beginning and end of every single episode, there's a whole thing about where you can reach out to for help, and I don't think, to my mind, it didn't glamorize suicide at all. It made it look absolutely awful. I couldn't watch the scene where she actually killed herself. I couldn't watch it. I find it too distressing, I guess. But then the effects you see on her family and her friends and all, it just, to me, it did not glamorize suicide at all. And so I was banging on about how I think actually it's fine. And then read the research reports which come out from it, and which apparently come out from every single time suicide is depicted in some sort of media, which is that people then feel like actually dying by suicide is an option, and then the rates go up. So however much I feel like, oh, actually it was fine and responsible, actually for vulnerable people in that position, it's very irresponsible, and actually it wasn't a good thing to do. So I guess there's some positives, but we also need to be really careful about being responsible for what we put out there also.
Well, I guess it's because it's that educating and the educating to, like there's one that provide knowledge and there's another one to provide a way, a how-to.
So we're having discussions with my eldest at the moment. He's 8 and he likes to play Minecraft, which is not a problem. He's allowed to play Minecraft on his little iPad. But he also likes to go onto YouTube and watch people talk about Minecraft and how to do certain things. And we've had to have a discussion with him saying, you cannot watch these channels because I don't know what these people are saying. I don't know their tone, don't know the message that they're saying, the language that they're using. So we had a big discussion with him about that versus what you could watch on the BBC iPlayer or anything like that, where it is for children because it has gone through a certain censorship. So it's getting him to understand the differences between two channels.
Do you remember when people were trying to, there was this big controversy about, what was it, some game where you drive and knock people over, I don't know what it's called.
There's been a few
American, like a big,
there's GTA.
Yeah, or something. I don't know. Maybe that's
basically steal cars.
You steal cars and you knock people over and you
it's
shoot
a computer game
and whatever. And there was
but
this
in real life
huge thing in a computer game.
Oh, okay.
It's like PlayStation, Xbox type game.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just say Tetris for everybody.
But lots of people had come out and said that this was influencing young people to, go on rampages and steal cars and knock people down. And the more they played these kinds of games, the more desensitized they were to. And even now, now there's like a rating on games.
Yes.
That's when the ratings, happened, is because this was one of the games. and then I think there was something else where you go around shooting police or something, I don't know. So people were talking about how young people felt like it was okay and they were being desensitized to, you know, going around shooting people, essentially. Are we now taking it a bit too far, though? You know, like, when does it become almost too much censored? I mean, I think a lot of young people probably are also aware that you can play this game but not go around actually shooting people.
Yeah.
You know, there are lots of games. You have the stupid frog thing when I was little, and you hit crocodiles on the head or frogs on the head. I don't ever remember actually getting a real hammer, finding a real frog and hitting it on the head. You know, it's kind of like, where does that censorship, like,
didn't you have that other game, suicide game, where they'd start playing it, the creator had made it so that by the end of the thing, the only thing they'd want to do is commit suicide.
I don't know this game.
It was Blue something, and he was caught. He was in Russia
I mean,
somewhere.
that's a
and
bit
stuff.
extreme, obviously.
But it was it's that whole idea with game theory and the way people learn that actually you can influence behaviour through repetition of these games, and especially with young people, actually anybody, mess around with their brain chemistry, so they're not even, like, if they're presented with a situation that looks like it would be in the game, they may make the same choice as they would in the game, even though it's real life.
I think it's about being responsible, because the thing is, I think it's all a bit of a grey area, really, because you're right in that. So I used to play GTA with my brother when I was young, and not that I'm not young, but still, we used to play it. And the thing that concerned me about it, I thought, well, neither of us are going to start, you know, breaking into cars and mowing people down. But the thing that bothered me about it was the language, because it referred to women as B-words and hoes and I don't know what. And I thought, I don't want my brother listening to this, because I don't want him growing up thinking that that's what you can call women. And it's interesting because it's the same game, and there's one aspect where I'm like, well, he's never going to do that. But the other one where I think, well, actually, I don't want that to influence him. So I think it's always going to be a bit of a grey area, I think.
I agree with the influence thing. I think that's really important to make sure that, especially I've got 3 young boys, so to me it's really important that I raise them to have respect, not only for women but for men and for other people and all those sorts of things, because you don't want those sorts of influences coming through, and I just sort of take it as a bit of a social responsibility to make sure that they're
I guess even as a parent, I guess that's, not to make you feel worse, but I imagine that's really quite hard, because I mean, even in things like music, I mean, I was just listening to some playlist on Spotify the other day, and some random song came on where it was talking about, I think the line was something like, you can hurt your B-word, but you can't hit mine, or something like that. And
oh my god!
I was like, what? I just thought, what is this? And this is just a random mainstream pop song.
So there is a film that the boys used to like to watch called Planes. It's like a Disney film, and there's this particular scene where all the planes are getting ready to go out and put out a bushfire in America somewhere, and the song Thunderstruck by AC/DC comes on. And it's great, the kids love it, and they're all like, Thunderstruck, and they're getting stuck in. And Gerald and I are like, oh, that's a great song, but have you listened to the lyrics? Because the song is about going to Las Vegas and getting down on your knees and all sorts of things. I'm like, we can't play this song for the children. We have to find the Disney version of this song so they can listen to it. Because the first time we put it on, the lyrics started coming on, and I was like, la 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 la, because I was like, we can't have them singing that, that's horrific.
Well, I remember Who Let the Dogs Out, and I remember Uzma singing to it, and she was like,
thought it was about dogs.
and she was like, Who Let the Dogs Out?
It's not about dogs.
No.
Oh, I need to go back and listen to
Mum was mortified. She was like, what? You need to stop singing that song now.
Well, so I've got 2 things on that. I have 2 things. So I did outside of work, I worked with a youth group, and we did a project about music and the influence of music, and you know, like because some of them were coming in and they're like grime and all this sort of stuff, you know, when grime was hip and happening, which obviously shows that I was never into grime. The guys and gals were all saying that music had no influence on them, and I was just like, I just don't believe you.
No, I don't believe
and
that.
I was like, so you know, name this song. Do you know the lyrics? Oh no, no. But I'd actually found instrumental versions, and I had them playing during the thing, and I was like, okay, you're singing the words. I thought you said it didn't have anything. I've literally just put the instrumental version, and you know all the words because you're actually telling it and stuff. And it was all about, you know, being your bee and showing your, you know, and doing this to
showing your, you know, showing your, you know.
But, and you know, the funniest thing is the reason I was aware of this was because years before, only a few, I was at uni, and me and my friend used to like to listen to a song called Hoochie Mama. It was our summer song, you know, and it was something like, you ain't nothing but a hoochie mama, hump that, rump that, hoochie mama. Now, what we hadn't anticipated was that her 3-year-old, who was in the back of the car, would be picking up on this song. And the nursery contacted her because one day her child was colouring. You ain't nothing but a hoochie mama, hump that, rump that, hoochie mama.
Well, the thing is, I remember being at school, in primary school, and singing to Salt and Pepper. Oh, push it. Yeah. I distinctly remember singing that song with all my friends and dancing around and going like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we thought it was,
Yeah,
but we didn't understand what it was.
Yeah.
You know, like
What
we
about that
just,
other one, Baby Got Back?
I don't remember that.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I got a lot of harassment in the street. Apparently, I had back. I didn't know because I hadn't heard the. Yeah, didn't know what back was.
Your anaconda ain't got none until you get
Oh my
buns,
God,
baby.
yeah.
Like,
No.
we used to sing that all the time. We had no idea what that was about.
Crazy.
There was a song that I used to sing.
She's looking for
I'm
it.
trying to remember what it. I don't remember the name, but it was your friend. It was
Clearly
Gassan,
your
I think,
influence.
that was at our house, and I was singing along to it. And then he stopped. He was like, "Do you know what this means?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Okay, carry on singing."
He probably didn't know how to explain, and he thought, I ain't going down
You
there.
know when we were on holiday in Tenerife? It was you, me, mum,
Yeah.
and we went to this dinner place, restaurant. I don't know. There was 2 guys singing this song, and I remember I picked it up from there. Oh my God, this is gonna bug me if I don't remember.
Life-changing
no
first
idea.
line.
Yeah,
No idea.
Oh
But
my God.
so many of these songs, like they literally become, what was it, earworms?
Was
Yeah,
it
that's the word.
Oh, Shaggy, it
Was
wasn't
it?
me.
Oh, it wasn't me. Yeah.
When I was a kid, I used to play that in the car. It used to come on like Capital Radio, whatever I was listening to at the time. And when my mum used to drive me home from school, and at some point there was one day, I think she clocked the lyrics, and she suddenly went, "What are we listening to?"
Oh my gosh. And that's sometimes I think it's literally, because I never really liked the Spice Girls, I'm going to say I'm not a fan. And I worked in Woolies, and I was walking down the road, and one of my friends just said to me, "I thought you didn't like Spice Girls." And I was like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "I think you pretty much sang 3 songs while we've been walking." And I was like, "What? Yeah?" Turns out I knew like 2 albums worth of songs, just having heard them.
Wow.
I actually feel like that's the same, like that whole musical thing is the same thing going back to the games. Like that learned repetition, okay,
Yeah.
it's like at some point you don't even realise you're acting. It's subconscious, not conscious thought.
Yeah.
I just looked up the lyrics to Thunderstruck, and I just showed it to Eve. The part that I used to go la 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 whenever it came on the radio was, "I was shaking at the knees, could I come again, please?" There is no way I can have my kids singing that song, so we had to find the Disney version from
Come
the
on,
film.
it's not as bad as push it real good.
Thankfully, your boys are into heavy metal, aren't they? Rather
I
than the
guess
R&B.
We could create a scale from 0 to push it and see where it lies on that scale.
Yes. I like the scale of 0 to push
And
it.
don't forget the thrusting motion as
Oh.
well.
Yeah, 'cause actually sometimes
We used to do that one as well.
See, it wasn't just me, it's an entire generation of young people
and
in primary school going, push it. Like,
But you know that one about "I like big butts and I cannot
Oh,
lie."
yes,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
the one I was
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ours was Toxic from Britney
Spears.
Spears.
Oh, and Hit Me Baby One More Time.
Yeah.
Is that not like a call for domestic abuse?
Well, apparently it's a highly sexualized song, and the lyrics have alter meanings.
Oh, do they?
Apparently, and that's why she's dressed like a schoolgirl,
Oh, is it?
a sexy schoolgirl.
But for those of us that don't read into these other layers, all I'm hearing is that she's asking to be beaten.
No, what she says is, "My loneliness is killing me.
Yeah.
I must confess, I still believe. When I am not with you, I lose my mind."
Exactly.
Sounds like a stalker.
So actually, she's basically saying she's addicted and the hit is like drugs.
No idea. Okay, great. So thank you very much, ladies,
Thanks
for
for having
joining me
Thank
on this
you.
episode of Poopology. And to all our listeners, please come back next Monday for the next episode of Poopology. Thank you.
From nice and cool now. I don't know if it's the air conditioning or the fan, but it's doing all right.
I feel cool on this side, but that could be just from the water.
Slightly damp over here.
And it's actually following me.
You got a damp patch underneath you, Jen. What's that all about?
Oh, no.